The world of royalty is built on centuries of tradition, secrecy, and meticulous record-keeping. Every event, every birth, and every milestone within the British royal family is carefully documented, often with a level of formality that stretches back through generations. But what happens when those carefully laid traditions come into question? What happens when the official record itself becomes the subject of scrutiny? At the center of this storm stands Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, a woman who has been the subject of media frenzy, controversy, and relentless speculation ever since she stepped into the royal spotlight. She has been accused of breaking protocol, challenging the establishment, and reshaping what it means to be a royal in the modern age. But this latest allegation is unlike anything before. The claim is not about royal fashion choices, PR strategies, or supposed feuds. It's about the very existence of her daughter, Lilibet Diana. A bombshell revelation has shaken the public, questioning whether Lilibet Diana, the second child of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, was actually born on June 4, 2021, as officially claimed. The allegations suggest something much more alarming: that the details of her birth were fabricated, and perhaps even more shockingly, that there is no concrete proof that she was born at all. This controversy is no longer limited to royal commentators or tabloid headlines. It has now been thrust into the public domain by none other than Dr. Drake, a highly regarded expert who has made it his mission to uncover the truth. Dr. Drake is no stranger to controversy. He has built a career on forensic investigations, unraveling complex legal and medical mysteries, and bringing to light hidden truths that others would prefer to keep buried. His credentials are well established, and his previous work has led to some of the most significant exposés in recent history. So when he stepped forward with claims that the birth of Lilibet Diana was not as it seemed, the world took notice. But before diving into the specifics of Dr. Drake's allegations, it is crucial to understand the backdrop against which this story is unfolding. The birth of a royal baby is always a momentous occasion, greeted with joy, public announcements, and carefully orchestrated media coverage. From the moment the pregnancy is announced to the first official appearance of the newborn, every detail is designed to uphold royal tradition while also satisfying public curiosity. Yet, when Meghan Markle gave birth to Lilibet Diana, things played out very differently. There was no grand hospital appearance like the one seen with Kate Middleton and Princess Diana before her. There were no public glimpses of the newborn wrapped in a blanket outside the hospital doors. Instead, there was an announcement made by the couple's spokesperson and a carefully worded statement on their website, confirming that Meghan had given birth at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California. The statement read, "On June 4th, we were blessed with the arrival of our daughter, Lily. She is more than we could have ever imagined, and we remain grateful for the love and prayers we've felt from across the globe." A sweet and simple message, seemingly without controversy. But from the moment the statement was released, questions began to surface. Unlike previous royal births, there was a distinct lack of official documentation, no visible hospital records, and an absence of the usual formal announcement from Buckingham Palace. Instead of a framed birth certificate displayed outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, as is customary, the world was given only a few short sentences in Meghan and Harry's word that everything was as they claimed. Some found this deviation from tradition understandable, given the couple's well-documented desire for privacy. Others, however, saw it as a red flag. After all, the Sussexes had just spent years living under intense media scrutiny in the UK before relocating to the United States. Could this secrecy be a protective measure, or was there something more to it? Something they didn't want the public to see. And then, Dr. Drake entered the scene. Unlike online conspiracy theorists or tabloid journalists seeking to push an agenda, Dr. Drake's approach was meticulous and methodical. He did not rely on speculation or hearsay. Instead, he examined the publicly available documents, the legal framework surrounding birth certificates in California, and the timeline of events surrounding Lilibet's birth. What he found led him to an astonishing conclusion. There were significant inconsistencies that could not simply be explained away as an effort to maintain privacy. First, there was the issue of the birth certificate itself. While it was eventually released, it was noticeably different from other birth certificates issued in California at the same time. Certain key details that should have been included were absent, and the way Meghan Markle's name was recorded seemed oddly inconsistent with legal conventions. Was this just a clerical oversight, or was something more deliberate at play? Then came the question of the date. While June 4, 2021, was the officially reported birth date, multiple sources claimed that there were discrepancies in the timeline of Meghan's pregnancy. Some reports suggested she had given birth earlier than announced, while others proposed an entirely different scenario, that the date itself had been chosen for symbolic reasons, rather than reflecting the actual birth. These allegations, while shocking, are not entirely without precedent. Over the years, there have been whispered rumors of powerful families manipulating birth records for various reasons, ranging from succession disputes to legal loopholes. Could this be another such case? The implications of Dr. Drake's findings are enormous. If Lilibet's birth details were indeed altered or fabricated, it would call into question not just Meghan and Harry's credibility, but also the legitimacy of their claims about privacy, media persecution, and their standing within the royal family. It would also raise ethical and legal concerns about the potential ramifications of falsifying official documents. But beyond the technicalities and legal implications, this controversy is about something much deeper: public trust. Meghan and Harry have long positioned themselves as champions of honesty, integrity, and transparency. They have accused the media of spreading misinformation, spoken out against the toxicity of tabloid culture, and framed themselves as victims of false narratives. If it turns out that they themselves have engaged in deception, it would be nothing short of a catastrophic blow to their reputation. As the revelations continue to unfold, one question looms large: why? If the allegations are true, why would Meghan and Harry go to such lengths to obscure the details of Lilibet's birth? Was it truly about privacy, or was there something they didn't want the world to know? This video will take a deep dive into every aspect of this story, from the origins of the controversy to the potential fallout. We will analyze the evidence, hear from experts, and uncover the shocking details that could change everything we thought we knew about the Sussexes. Stay tuned, because what comes next might just be the most explosive revelation yet. When it comes to royal births, every detail matters. The announcement, the timing, the location, and even the way the information is delivered to the public. These are all carefully orchestrated elements of a larger tradition that has shaped the British monarchy for centuries. With every new royal arrival, there are protocols to follow, expectations to meet, and historical precedents that guide how such moments are presented to the world. This is why, when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announced the birth of their daughter, Lilibet Diana, the world was expecting something similar to what had been done before. A carefully coordinated press statement from Buckingham Palace, a formal birth certificate filed in accordance with local laws, and perhaps even an official photo or public sighting of the newborn, as has been the tradition for past royal babies. But what happened instead was something far from ordinary. On June 6, 2021, 2 days after the supposed birth date of June 4, an announcement was posted on the website of the couple's foundation, Archwell. It was a simple and brief message, confirming that their daughter had arrived safely, weighing 7 pounds 11 ounces, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California. The statement also noted that both mother and child were healthy and doing well, and it thanked the public for their support. At first glance, this announcement seemed straightforward. But for those who had followed the births of other royal children, including Prince William and Kate Middleton's 3 children and even Meghan and Harry's firstborn, Archie, there were glaring differences that immediately stood out. For starters, there was no announcement from Buckingham Palace. Traditionally, royal births are accompanied by an official statement from the palace, notifying the public of the birth and often including remarks from the reigning monarch. When Archie was born in 2019, a formal announcement was made by Buckingham Palace, and members of the press were alerted ahead of time about the expected delivery. With Lilibet, however, the palace remained notably silent. Another significant departure from royal tradition was the location of the birth itself. While Meghan and Harry were no longer working royals at the time of Lilibet's birth, the expectation was still that they would follow some of the standard procedures that applied to royal babies. Most notably, previous royal births had taken place in prestigious hospitals in London, such as the Lindo Wing at St. Mary's Hospital, where Princess Diana gave birth to both Prince William and Prince Harry, and where Kate Middleton had all 3 of her children. In contrast, Meghan and Harry opted for Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, a relatively private facility located in Montecito, California. While this was not necessarily suspicious on its own, it did raise questions about why they chose this hospital over one of the more high-profile medical centers in Los Angeles, such as Cedars-Sinai or UCLA Medical Center, which are often frequented by celebrities and high-profile individuals. Then there was the issue of the delayed announcement. While it is not uncommon for parents to take some time before announcing a birth, the delay of 2 days was unusual, especially given the intense public interest surrounding the couple. In previous royal births, announcements were made almost immediately after the child was born, often within hours. With Lilibet, the delay led to speculation that something was being hidden, or that the timing of the announcement did not align with the actual birth date. As speculation grew, more inconsistencies began to emerge. One of the most puzzling details was the fact that no official birth registration was publicly accessible in the days and weeks following the announcement. In the United Kingdom, birth certificates for royal babies are typically made available to the public, following legal requirements that govern the registration of births. In California, while birth certificates are not always immediately accessible to the public, they are still required to be filed within a specific time frame. Yet, no one was able to locate Lilibet Diana's birth certificate for several weeks. This unusual delay raised questions, with some wondering whether the document existed at all or if there were discrepancies in the details recorded on it. When the birth certificate was eventually released, it added more fuel to the fire rather than quelling suspicions. The birth certificate listed Meghan Markle as Rachel Meghan Markle, her legal name, rather than Duchess of Sussex, which was the title she had used on Archie's birth certificate. Meanwhile, Prince Harry was simply listed as the Duke of Sussex. The formatting of the document appeared slightly different from other birth certificates issued in California around the same time, leading some to question whether there had been alterations or unusual handling of the registration process. Adding to the confusion was the fact that no medical staff from Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital had publicly confirmed Meghan's stay at the facility. While medical privacy laws prevent hospitals from disclosing patient information without consent, in previous royal births, there had always been unofficial confirmations from hospital staff or reports from witnesses who had seen increased security around the hospital. With Lilibet, there were no such accounts, leading some to speculate that Meghan had never actually given birth at the hospital at all. As rumors swirled, many turned to social media to voice their skepticism. Theories ranged from the possibility that Lilibet was born earlier than announced to the more extreme claim that she had been born via a surrogate, or even that she had not been born at all. While these theories may have seemed outrageous at first, the continued inconsistencies and lack of transparency only fueled further speculation. One of the biggest sources of contention was the couple's decision not to release any photographs of Lilibet immediately after her birth. Unlike previous royal babies, whose first images were typically shared with the public within days, Meghan and Harry waited for several months before releasing an official portrait of their daughter. When they finally did, it was a carefully curated photo taken during the holiday season, showing Lilibet sitting on a blanket with Meghan, Harry, and Archie beside her. By the time this image was released, the controversy surrounding her birth had already taken on a life of its own. The lack of immediate proof, combined with the unorthodox handling of her birth announcement and certificate, had left many unconvinced. Even among those who supported Meghan and Harry, there were lingering questions about why they had chosen to be so secretive about their daughter's arrival. The story of Lilibet Diana's birth was already unconventional, but with the emergence of Dr. Drake's claims, it took on an entirely new dimension. His investigation into the details of the birth certificate, the timeline discrepancies, and the unusual handling of the announcement only deepened the mystery. Was this simply a case of Meghan and Harry wanting to maintain their privacy, or was there something far more significant being hidden from the public eye? As the questions mounted, the need for clear and verifiable answers became even more pressing. The birth of a child, especially one with ties to the British royal family, is an event of historical significance. If there were irregularities in the official record, what did that mean for the legitimacy of the information that had been presented to the world? And if the truth was different from what had been publicly stated, why had such lengths been taken to obscure it? This controversy was no longer just about Meghan and Harry's personal choices. It had become a matter of credibility, transparency, and public trust. The deeper one looked, the more the inconsistencies seemed to pile up. And as Dr. Drake continued to uncover more details, it became clear that this was only the beginning of what could be one of the most shocking revelations in modern royal history. Dr. Drake is not a name that was widely known in mainstream media before this controversy. However, within certain circles, particularly among investigative researchers and forensic analysts, he had already built a reputation as a meticulous and highly skilled professional. His background in forensic investigations, legal research, and public record analysis had made him a key figure in several high-profile cases over the years. Unlike many self-proclaimed experts who push theories without substantiated evidence, Dr. Drake's work was methodical, data-driven, and legally sound. The question then becomes, why did Dr. Drake, a man who has spent much of his career quietly uncovering the truth in other significant cases, choose to focus on the birth of Lilibet Diana? What compelled him to dig into the details of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's second child? To answer this, it is essential to look at Dr. Drake's approach. He is not a royal commentator, nor is he a journalist chasing sensationalist headlines. His background is rooted in forensic evidence, legal compliance, and identifying inconsistencies in official documents. He first became interested in the birth of Lilibet Diana not because of a personal vendetta or bias, but because he noticed a series of irregularities in the way the birth was recorded, announced, and presented to the public. His investigation began with the most fundamental question. Was the birth certificate authentic and legally sound? In California, where Lilibet was reportedly born, birth certificates are subject to strict regulatory requirements. There are standardized forms, mandatory disclosures, and a set process that must be followed when registering a birth. Upon obtaining a copy of Lilibet's birth certificate, Dr. Drake immediately noticed irregularities. The formatting was inconsistent with other birth certificates issued in the same county at the same time. The way Meghan Markle's name was recorded did not align with her legal identification, and Prince Harry's title was listed in a way that raised eyebrows. At first glance, these discrepancies may seem minor, but in the world of forensic documentation, even the smallest inconsistencies can be significant. Every official document follows a strict protocol, and deviations from the standard format often signal an anomaly, either an error, an alteration, or, in more serious cases, deliberate misrepresentation. Dr. Drake's findings suggested that something was off, and that was enough to warrant a deeper investigation. But Dr. Drake did not stop with the birth certificate. He also examined the timeline of events surrounding Lilibet's birth, cross-referencing public records, media reports, and eyewitness accounts. One of the most glaring red flags he uncovered was the unusual silence from Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, the facility where Meghan reportedly gave birth. While medical confidentiality laws prevent hospitals from releasing personal details about patients, there are often indirect confirmations from hospital staff, security details, or even nearby media outlets when a high-profile individual gives birth. When Kate Middleton gave birth to each of her 3 children, there was an unmistakable increase in security around the hospital. Eyewitnesses who saw activity within the building, and hospital staff members who, while bound by confidentiality, provided subtle confirmations that a royal birth had indeed taken place. In contrast, with Lilibet Diana's birth, there was a strange vacuum of information. No medical staff came forward with even a general statement. No eyewitnesses reported seeing increased security at the hospital, and there were no accounts of hospital activity that suggested a high-profile birth had occurred. This absence of expected activity added fuel to Dr. Drake's concerns. If Meghan Markle had indeed given birth at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital on June 4, 2021, why was there no visible confirmation, even indirectly? Was it possible that the birth had taken place elsewhere, or had something else entirely happened? Dr. Drake's research also took him into the legal framework surrounding birth registration in California. While California does allow for some level of privacy when it comes to birth records, there are still mandatory requirements that must be met for a birth to be legally recognized. The lack of timely public access to Lilibet's birth certificate, combined with formatting inconsistencies, raised further questions about whether standard procedures had been followed, or if there had been efforts to delay or manipulate the release of information. As his findings started to gain traction, Dr. Drake found himself facing resistance. Many mainstream media outlets dismissed his concerns as baseless speculation, while royal commentators brushed off his research as conspiracy-driven. But those who had followed his past investigations knew that he was not one to make claims lightly. His reputation was built on verifiable evidence, and he had uncovered inconsistencies in legal documentation before, some of which had led to significant legal actions. One of the most notable aspects of Dr. Drake's findings was the fact that his work was not based on subjective opinions or personal bias. He did not approach the subject with the intention of discrediting Meghan and Harry. Instead, his focus was on the integrity of public records and ensuring that official documentation met legal standards. In his view, the birth of Lilibet Diana was a matter of public interest not because of who her parents were, but because of the unusual handling of her birth records and announcement. Another critical factor that Dr. Drake examined was the timeline of Meghan Markle's pregnancy. When compared to the official birth date of June 4, 2021, there were inconsistencies in the way Meghan's pregnancy had been publicly documented. She had been seen in certain public appearances in the months leading up to Lilibet's birth, but there were gaps in the timeline that raised questions about whether she had indeed given birth on the reported date. Dr. Drake also noted that, unlike with Archie, there had been no pregnancy-related hospital sightings, no leaked reports from staff, and no visible medical personnel who had come forward, even anonymously, to confirm the birth. This stark difference in how Meghan's second pregnancy had been documented compared to her first only added to the mounting list of unusual factors. With each new finding, Dr. Drake's investigation gained more attention, and soon, it was no longer just independent researchers and online commentators discussing his claims. Mainstream outlets began picking up on the inconsistencies, and questions were raised about whether Meghan and Harry would address the growing controversy. But as the pressure mounted, the Sussexes remained silent. They did not respond to the allegations, nor did they provide any additional documentation to clarify the situation. This silence was deafening, and for many, it only deepened suspicions. If there was nothing to hide, why not simply address the inconsistencies and provide clear, verifiable proof that Lilibet had been born on June 4, 2021, as claimed? Dr. Drake's findings, while not outright accusations of wrongdoing, posed serious questions that demanded answers. At the core of his investigation was the principle of transparency. When dealing with official documents, particularly those that have historical and legal significance, accuracy and legitimacy matter. If the birth details of a member of the royal family had been misrepresented, it would not only be an issue of public trust, but also one with potential legal implications. As the controversy continued to gain momentum, Dr. Drake's work became the focal point of a much larger debate about privacy, transparency, and the responsibilities of public figures. Meghan and Harry had long positioned themselves as advocates for honesty and integrity, often criticizing the media for spreading misinformation. But if their own records were called into question, what did that mean for their credibility? The unfolding drama surrounding Dr. Drake's claims was far from over, and as more evidence emerged, the world was left wondering whether this was merely a misunderstanding or the beginning of one of the most shocking revelations in recent royal history. The date discrepancy. Was Lilibet born on June 4, 2021? The exact day of a royal birth is one of the most important details in official record-keeping. In the British monarchy, the birth of a royal baby is not just a family milestone. It is a matter of historical significance. Every royal birth is documented meticulously, with clear announcements from Buckingham Palace, medical confirmations, and a structured timeline of events leading up to and following the birth. However, when it comes to the birth of Lilibet Diana, the official date of June 4, 2021, has come under increasing scrutiny due to inconsistencies in Meghan and Harry's timeline, the delayed announcement, and missing public confirmations. The official story, according to the Sussexes, is that Lilibet was born on June 4 at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California. This claim was made public on June 6 via an official announcement on the R12 website. The message was short and simple, confirming the child's arrival, her full name, and a brief note of gratitude. Yet, from the moment this statement was released, discrepancies began to emerge. One of the first red flags was the timing of the announcement itself. Traditionally, royal births are announced within hours of the child's arrival. When Archie was born in 2019, Buckingham Palace released a statement early on May 6, confirming that Meghan had gone into labor. By the afternoon, another statement confirmed the birth, and within 2 days, the first photos of the new family were shared. In contrast, the announcement of Lilibet's birth came 2 full days after her supposed arrival. In an era where information spreads rapidly, and given the high-profile nature of the Sussexes, this delay stood out as unusual. Some speculated that the couple was simply trying to enjoy their private moments before sharing the news. However, others questioned whether the delay was intentional, perhaps to align the announcement with a particular narrative or to buy time before details could be finalized. Another factor that raised questions was the lack of external verification. Usually, when a high-profile individual gives birth, there are indirect confirmations, hospital staff, security details, or even local witnesses who notice unusual activity. When Kate Middleton gave birth to Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, media representatives stationed outside the Lindo wing at St. Mary's Hospital saw hospital personnel preparing for the royal arrival. Even before official confirmation, it was clear that something significant was happening. Yet, with Lilibet, there were no such indicators. No increase in security was observed at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. No hospital employees came forward, anonymously or otherwise, to confirm that Meghan Markle had been admitted or that a royal birth had taken place. This was especially strange considering that Santa Barbara is a small community, and a high-profile birth of this nature would likely have drawn at least some attention. The next issue came with the official birth certificate. While the document was eventually released, it did not immediately appear in public records as expected. Typically, in California, birth certificates are filed within a few days of the child's birth and become part of the public record. However, in this case, the certificate was not easily accessible for weeks after the birth. When it was finally obtained, several details stood out. First, Meghan Markle was listed as Rachel Meghan Markle, rather than the Duchess of Sussex, which had been used on Archie's birth certificate. While this might not seem like a major discrepancy, it was a deviation from the norm. Secondly, Prince Harry's title was formatted in a way that appeared inconsistent with standard documentation. Most importantly, the document itself had structural inconsistencies when compared to other birth certificates issued in Santa Barbara County around the same time. Dr. Drake, whose forensic analysis of documents had already identified inconsistencies, examined the birth certificate in detail. One of the most striking discoveries he made was that certain mandatory elements required for California birth certificates appeared to be formatted differently than usual. While it was not outright proof of fabrication, it did raise concerns about whether the document had been altered or processed under unusual circumstances. But perhaps the most perplexing aspect of this entire situation was the timeline of Meghan's pregnancy itself. According to official records, Meghan and Harry announced that they were expecting their second child on February 14, 2021. This was an unusual date for an announcement, as it coincided exactly with the anniversary of Princess Diana's famous pregnancy reveal when she was expecting Prince Harry. This detail led many to believe that the timing of the announcement was chosen for symbolic reasons rather than practical ones. However, the timing of Meghan's pregnancy photos also raised eyebrows. In March 2021, during the now infamous Oprah Winfrey interview, Meghan appeared visibly pregnant. Some noted that, given the timeline of her February announcement, her pregnancy seemed more advanced than it should have been at that point. Others pointed out that during certain public appearances leading up to June, Meghan's pregnancy bump appeared inconsistent in size, leading to speculation about whether the timeline of her pregnancy was being manipulated for media purposes. Additionally, a notable period of time in late May and early June saw a significant drop in public activity from the Sussexes. Meghan, who had been actively participating in virtual engagements and writing public statements, suddenly became completely silent in the days leading up to June 4. While some attributed this to her preparing for labor, others found it strange that there were no reports of medical personnel visiting the Sussexes' Montecito home, no indications of last-minute hospital visits, and no logistical arrangements that usually precede a high-profile birth. When looking at the data holistically, Dr. Drake's findings suggested that something did not add up. The inconsistencies in the timeline, the delay in the birth announcement, the formatting of the birth certificate, and the lack of external confirmation all pointed to one conclusion. There was a strong possibility that June 4, 2021, was not Lilibet Diana's actual birth date, but if the official birth date was incorrect, the next logical question was why? Why would Meghan and Harry choose to misrepresent such a fundamental detail? Was this simply a case of privacy concerns, or was there something deeper at play? Some theories suggested that Lilibet may have been born earlier than officially stated, and the couple delayed the announcement to align with a particular narrative. Others speculated that surrogacy might have played a role, and the delayed announcement was necessary to coordinate the legal aspects of registering her birth. More extreme theories even proposed that Lilibet was not born in California at all, but in a different location entirely, necessitating a delay while documents were arranged. At the heart of this controversy was the question of credibility. Meghan and Harry have often positioned themselves as advocates for truth, transparency, and exposing false narratives. Yet, if their own child's birth date was being manipulated, it would call into question the sincerity of their broader claims. Dr. Drake's findings were not about attacking the Sussexes personally, but about upholding the integrity of official documentation. If a royal birth, a matter of historical significance, could be shrouded in uncertainty, what did that say about the reliability of other statements made by Meghan and Harry? If they were willing to be less than forthcoming about something as basic as a birth date, what else might they be obscuring? As more evidence emerged, the public demand for clarity grew louder. If there was nothing to hide, why not simply provide the necessary proof to put the controversy to rest? A simple hospital confirmation, a statement from attending medical staff, or even a more detailed account of the birth could have easily quashed the speculation. Instead, the silence from Meghan and Harry only deepened the mystery. This was no longer just a minor discrepancy. It was a fundamental question about the legitimacy of public records, the responsibility of high-profile figures to be truthful, and the trustworthiness of those who claim to be victims of misinformation. The date discrepancy was not just a footnote in the story of Lilibet Diana. It was a crucial piece of a much larger puzzle that was only beginning to unravel. The birth of a royal baby is not merely a private family event. It is a historic occasion that follows a carefully orchestrated protocol. For centuries, the British monarchy has adhered to strict traditions when it comes to royal births, ensuring that every detail is documented, verified, and presented to the public in a manner that maintains both transparency and reverence for the institution. The process is designed to uphold the integrity of the royal lineage while providing the public with the information they expect from a family whose members are, in many ways, public figures. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced the birth of their daughter, Lilibet Diana, on June 6, 2021, the manner in which they handled the announcement and documentation of the birth deviated significantly from the long-established customs followed by the royal family. While some of these differences could be attributed to the couple's decision to step away from their senior royal duties, others raise questions about whether these deviations were deliberate attempts to obscure certain details. To understand the controversy surrounding Lilibet Diana's birth, it is crucial to examine how royal births have traditionally been handled and why certain protocols exist in the first place. One of the most significant elements of a royal birth is the public announcement, which historically comes directly from Buckingham Palace. This tradition ensures that the information is officially verified and presented to the world in a consistent and reputable manner. When Prince William and Kate Middleton had their 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, Buckingham Palace released statements confirming when Kate had gone into labor and later followed up with a formal announcement of the birth. These statements included essential details such as the child's weight, time of birth, and the hospital where the delivery took place. The Sussexes, however, chose a different route. Instead of a palace-issued announcement, the birth of Lilibet was disclosed via the Archewell website, 2 days after the supposed birth date. This alone was unusual, as the royal family had never relied on a private foundation's website to make such announcements. Furthermore, the absence of a real-time update about Meghan's labor, something that had been customary for other royal mothers, made the entire situation feel more secretive than previous births. Another key element of royal births is the tradition of displaying the official birth announcement outside Buckingham Palace. Historically, after a royal baby is born, a framed notice bearing the child's birth details is placed on an ornate easel at the palace gates. This practice, dating back centuries, serves as an official record for the public and the media. Even though Prince Harry and Meghan were no longer senior working royals, Lilibet was still born into the royal bloodline, making it reasonable to expect that some version of this tradition would be upheld. Yet, there was no such announcement for Lilibet. The location of royal births is another significant factor. For decades, royal mothers have given birth in hospitals with a strong royal association. Princess Diana delivered both Prince William and Prince Harry at the Lindo Wing of St. Mary's Hospital in London, a private maternity unit renowned for its discretion and high level of medical care. Kate Middleton followed the same tradition, delivering all three of her children at the same facility. The choice of the Lindo Wing was not just about tradition. It also ensured that royal births were handled with the utmost security, professionalism, and accessibility to official record-keeping. In contrast, Meghan Markle gave birth to Lilibet at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, a small private facility in California. While there is nothing inherently suspicious about choosing this hospital, it was an unconventional decision given the lack of historical precedent. Additionally, despite being a high-profile couple, there were no reports of increased security measures or hospital lockdowns, which would be expected for a royal birth of this magnitude. Even celebrities who give birth at prominent hospitals in Los Angeles, such as Cedars-Sinai, often have enhanced security and heightened privacy measures. The absence of such precautions at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital was another anomaly that fueled speculation. A major difference between past royal births and Lilibet's was the handling of medical verification. Traditionally, the attending doctors and midwives sign a public document confirming the details of the birth. For example, when Prince George was born, the birth certificate was signed by Guy Thorpe Beeston, the royal family's official gynecologist, alongside other high-ranking medical professionals. The presence of an official witness ensures that there is no dispute over the legitimacy of the birth details. In Lilibet's case, no such confirmation was provided. The only documentation made available was the birth certificate, which itself took longer than usual to surface and contained inconsistencies in formatting. There was no public statement from any attending doctor, and no independent medical professionals came forward to verify that the birth had taken place at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. While patient privacy laws in the U.S. differ from those in the U.K., the complete absence of any form of confirmation from hospital personnel was another departure from established royal protocol. Another major aspect of royal births is the introduction of the newborn to the world. Historically, royal babies have been presented to the public within days of birth, often in the form of an official photograph or a public appearance by the parents. When Prince William and Kate had their children, they appeared outside the Lindo Wing just hours after birth, allowing photographers to capture the first glimpse of the newborn. Even in more private royal births, such as that of Princess Eugenie's son, an official photograph was shared promptly. With Lilibet, there was no immediate photograph or introduction. In fact, the first publicly released image of Lilibet came months later, in a Christmas card from the Sussexes. By then, the speculation surrounding her birth had already taken on a life of its own, and the delay in releasing an image only added to the growing sense that something about this birth was being hidden. The way Meghan and Harry handled Lilibet's birth differed significantly from how they managed Archie's. When Archie was born in May 2019, there was at least some adherence to royal tradition. Although Meghan and Harry did not appear on the hospital steps with their newborn, as Kate and Diana had done, they did participate in an official photo call at Windsor Castle 2 days after Archie's birth. They also made a point to introduce Archie to Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, with an official photograph capturing the historic moment. In contrast, Lilibet's birth was marked by secrecy, deviation from protocol, and a noticeable absence of public records. Even when Meghan and Harry spoke about their daughter publicly, they provided very little concrete information. This stood in stark contrast to their previous transparency about Archie's birth, furthering speculation that there was something unique about Lilibet's circumstances. For centuries, the British monarchy has maintained rigorous documentation of royal births to prevent disputes over lineage, succession, and legitimacy. Every child born into the royal family is not only part of a legacy but also a potential future heir, making it essential that their birth records are indisputable. The secrecy surrounding Lilibet's birth, the inconsistencies in the official documentation, and the deviations from protocol have led many to question whether all the details provided were accurate. If Meghan and Harry had chosen to simply keep their daughter's birth private, that would have been one thing. However, by publicly announcing the birth but failing to follow even the most basic verification steps expected for a royal child, they created an environment ripe for speculation. The lack of independent confirmation, the unusual hospital choice, In the delay in making key documents available only fueled concerns that something was being concealed. The royal family has always understood the importance of protocol when it comes to matters of birth, marriage, and succession. These traditions exist not only to maintain order, but also to reassure the public that the institution is built on transparency and legitimacy. By breaking from these long-standing customs without offering a clear alternative, Meghan and Harry created a situation in which doubts about Lilibet's birth became inevitable. The question remains, was this deviation from protocol a simple attempt to maintain privacy, or was it indicative of something more significant? And if it was merely about privacy, why did they still choose to publicly announce her birth while withholding so many key details? As scrutiny continues to build, the demand for clarity grows stronger. From the moment Meghan Markle and Prince Harry stepped away from their roles as senior working royals, media scrutiny surrounding them intensified. Every public appearance, statement, and decision they made was analyzed under a microscope, fueling endless speculation about their lives. But nothing stirred as much controversy as the birth of their second child, Lilibet Diana. As questions arose regarding inconsistencies in her birth records, the media, both mainstream and independent, began an intense investigation to uncover the truth. Journalists who had covered the royal family for decades immediately noticed red flags in the way the birth was announced. Unlike previous royal births, which were verified through Buckingham Palace and well documented by medical professionals, Lilibet's birth was handled in an uncharacteristically secretive manner. The announcement came 2 days after the supposed birth date. No immediate birth certificate was available, and there were no public sightings or statements from medical staff at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Royal experts and commentators weighed in on the unusual circumstances. One of the most vocal figures in the discussion was Angela Levin, a royal biographer with years of experience covering the British monarchy. She pointed out that, unlike Archie's birth, which was at least partially documented through official channels, Lilibet's birth left behind a trail of unanswered questions. This isn't about invading privacy, Levin said in an interview. This is about following the standard procedures that have been in place for generations. If they had simply said they wanted to keep things private, that would be one thing. But to provide an official date and location without the usual verification, why do that? Another experienced journalist, Richard Kay, who has covered the royal family for decades, noted that even when Prince Harry and Meghan wanted to separate themselves from royal tradition, there were still legal obligations when it came to birth records. The public isn't asking for photos from the delivery room, he said. They're asking for basic confirmation that the birth took place when and where they said it did. And if that's not something they're willing to provide, then people will start questioning why. As the conversation gained traction, more journalists and investigators began to dig into the details. Some turned their attention to the hospital itself. Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital is a relatively small, private facility, not the kind of place one would expect a high-profile couple to choose, especially given that they had access to more secure medical centers in Los Angeles. Several reporters attempted to contact hospital administrators for comments, but the responses were vague. One anonymous hospital employee reportedly told a journalist, "If she gave birth here, we weren't told about it." The lack of independent verification wasn't the only issue. The birth certificate, which was eventually made available, became another point of contention. Experts in forensic documentation, including Dr. Drake, examined the birth certificate closely and found subtle but noticeable inconsistencies. Compared to other birth certificates issued in California around the same time, Lilibet's appeared to have formatting differences. While birth certificates can sometimes vary slightly depending on the county, these differences raise the question of whether the document had been processed differently than usual. Media scrutiny intensified when independent investigators attempted to track down hospital records related to the birth. California law allows birth records to remain private, but certain aspects, such as confirmation that a birth took place, are typically accessible. Yet, no concrete hospital records seem to be available, leading some journalists to question whether there had been an attempt to seal or withhold documents that would typically be part of the public record. Another respected voice in the debate was royal correspondent Camilla Tominey, who had broken major stories about Meghan Markle in the past. Tominey pointed out that the secrecy surrounding Lilibet's birth contrasted sharply with Meghan and Harry's pattern of publicizing other aspects of their lives. They've done high-profile interviews, they've participated in Netflix documentaries, They've written books about their personal experiences, she said. So why is this the one thing they refuse to be transparent about? Tabloid media took a more aggressive approach, with several outlets running speculative stories about possible reasons for the inconsistencies. Some theorized that the delay in announcing the birth was a strategic move to control the media narrative. Others suggested that legal complications surrounding Lilibet's birth might have necessitated extra time before making the announcement. However, not all media outlets were critical. Some journalists defended Meghan and Harry's decision to maintain privacy. Omid Scobie, a journalist known for his close relationship with the Sussexes, dismissed the concerns as conspiracy theories. "This is just another attempt to discredit Meghan and Harry," he said. "There is no reason to doubt their account of Lilibet's birth. They wanted to handle it differently, and that's their right." Despite such defenses, the controversy refused to die down. The issue was no longer just about Meghan and Harry's choices. It had evolved into a broader discussion about transparency, public trust, and the responsibilities of public figures. Even major American news networks began covering the story, with CNN, Fox News, and NBC running segments discussing the mounting speculation. One of the more striking aspects of the media scrutiny was how it was being handled by the Sussexes themselves. Rather than addressing the speculation head-on, Meghan and Harry remained silent. Their refusal to clarify details only added fuel to the fire, with commentators pointing out that a simple statement or document release could have put an end to the questions. Some experts speculated that their silence was a strategic decision. By refusing to engage with the controversy, they could avoid giving it legitimacy. But others argued that this approach was backfiring. Every day that passed without clarification led to more theories and deeper media investigations. Social media also played a significant role in amplifying the discussion. Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube became hotbeds for debate, with users dissecting every detail of the birth records, hospital choice, and timeline discrepancies. Hashtags related to the controversy trended repeatedly, and independent content creators produced long-form videos analyzing the inconsistencies. Some of these videos garnered millions of views, further cementing public interest in the mystery. Legal analysts also weighed in, questioning whether any laws had been broken in the handling of Lilibet's birth records. While it is not illegal for parents to withhold personal details, misrepresentation on official documents is a serious issue. If any part of the birth certificate was found to have been altered or misreported, it could lead to legal repercussions. One investigative journalist, Tom Bauer, who had previously written critically about Meghan Markle, suggested that the couple's insistence on privacy in this particular case seemed out of character. They have no problem sharing intimate details about their struggles, their conflicts with the royal family, and their private conversations, he noted. So why is this different? The simplest answer is usually the right one. They have something to hide. As the media continued to push for answers, one thing became clear. The controversy was not going away anytime soon. With every unanswered question, the story grew bigger, drawing in more journalists, analysts, and royal experts. Some speculated that the Sussexes were hoping the news cycle would move on. After all, the media had a tendency to shift focus quickly. But this was different. The birth of a royal child was not just another celebrity rumor. It was a matter of historical record. Until concrete answers were provided, the questions would persist. What started as minor discrepancies had now become one of the most talked about royal controversies in recent history. And with experts continuing to investigate, it was only a matter of time before more revelations emerged. As media scrutiny intensified and experts dissected inconsistencies surrounding the birth of Lilibet Diana, speculation about what truly transpired reached a fever pitch. With so many unanswered questions, ranging from the delayed announcement to the unusual handling of the birth certificate, several theories emerged attempting to explain the discrepancies. Some were grounded in reasonable suspicion, while others ventured into more controversial territory. Yet, each theory carried weight in its own way, fueled by gaps in the official narrative and a lack of transparency from Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. One of the more plausible theories suggested that Meghan and Harry intentionally misrepresented the exact date of Lilibet's birth to protect their privacy. Given their well-documented struggles with media intrusion, some believe that they may have preemptively decided to withhold or alter certain details to prevent excessive scrutiny. Supporters of this theory pointed to the fact that royal births typically follow a very structured timeline of announcements and public disclosures. By delaying the announcement and possibly adjusting the birth date, the Sussexes might have been attempting to control the media narrative and prevent the kind of media circus that surrounded Archie's birth. Additionally, some pointed to their previous actions as a precedent. When Archie was born, Meghan and Harry initially withheld details and opted for a private announcement, rather than following royal tradition. This demonstrated their desire to do things on their own terms, away from royal protocol. If they had taken similar measures with Lilibet's birth, it would not be out of character. However, critics of this theory argued that if privacy were the only concern, they could have simply stated from the beginning that they would not be sharing details. Instead, they provided a specific date and location, details that, if untrue, would indicate deliberate misinformation rather than just an attempt to maintain privacy. Another widely discussed theory suggested that Lilibet was born days, or even weeks before the official announcement. Proponents of this idea pointed to the strange gap in public activity from Meghan and Harry in the days leading up to June 4, as well as inconsistencies in Meghan's pregnancy timeline. Some noted that during the couple's Oprah interview in March 2021, Meghan appeared to be further along in her pregnancy than expected. Additionally, Meghan had kept a much lower profile compared to her first pregnancy, which some found suspicious. Furthermore, the lack of eyewitness accounts, hospital confirmations, or third-party verifications added fuel to the speculation. Unlike previous royal births where hospital staff or security personnel indirectly confirmed activity related to a royal delivery, Lilibet's birth had no such reports. If she had been born earlier than announced, it could explain why no one saw any increased security or unusual activity at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital around June 4. One of the most controversial theories proposed that Meghan Markle had not physically given birth to Lilibet, but had instead used a surrogate. This theory, while speculative, gained traction due to inconsistencies in Meghan's pregnancy appearances and the lack of medical verification surrounding the birth. Supporters of this theory pointed to moments where Meghan's baby bump appeared to change in size between public appearances, suggesting the possibility of a prosthetic bump or staged pregnancy photos. While changes in appearance can be attributed to factors like clothing, lighting, and posture, the frequency with which these observations were made led some to believe there was more to the story. So why not clarify something as straightforward as a birth announcement? Critics suggested that their refusal to respond indicated that they were hiding something. If the details of Lilibet's birth were completely normal, a simple confirmation from a doctor or an official statement from the hospital could have ended the speculation immediately. Instead, their choice to remain silent only fueled further suspicion. Rather than addressing the controversy directly, Meghan and Harry seemed to rely on allies and sympathetic journalists to dismiss the growing speculation. Omid Scobie, a journalist known to have close ties to the Sussexes, was one of the first to publicly reject claims that Lilibet's birth date was inaccurate. In an interview, he dismissed the concerns as wild conspiracy theory designed to undermine Meghan and Harry. He argued that there was no legitimate reason to question the official birth announcement, calling it a product of tabloid sensationalism. Another indirect response came through various opinion pieces published by media outlets that had previously supported Meghan and Harry. These articles framed the controversy as an invasion of privacy, arguing that questioning the details of a child's birth was unethical. While these arguments resonated with some supporters, they failed to address the core issue. Why were there inconsistencies in the official documentation? Some observers also noted that Meghan and Harry's defenders did not provide hard evidence to refute the claims. Instead, their responses relied heavily on dismissing critics rather than providing direct counterarguments. This approach may have satisfied loyal supporters, but for those on the fence about the issue, it did little to eliminate doubts. In the months following Lilibet's birth, Meghan and Harry made multiple public appearances, but they carefully avoided discussing the controversy. During interviews and speaking engagements, they focused on their philanthropic work, mental health advocacy, and ongoing conflicts with the royal family. One of the most anticipated opportunities for them to address the speculation was Meghan's appearance on the Ellen DeGeneres show in November 2021. During the interview, Meghan spoke about her life in California. Their refusal to respond fueled even more intense reactions from the public, with opinions split into several distinct camps. One faction of the public, particularly those who have long supported Meghan and Harry, dismissed the controversy entirely. These individuals saw the speculation as yet another attempt by the media and royal traditionalists to discredit the Sussexes. Supporters argued that the scrutiny surrounding Lilibet's birth was nothing more than an extension of the negative media campaign that had followed Meghan since she first joined the royal family. Many pointed to the harsh treatment she had received from the British press, particularly during her pregnancy with Archie, and believed that the current controversy was just another way for critics to attack her character. On social media, hashtags like #LeaveMeghanAlone and #WeLoveLily trended as fans rallied behind the Sussexes. Some high-profile celebrities and influencers also voiced their support, condemning what they saw as an invasion of Meghan and Harry's privacy. A common argument among this group was that Meghan and Harry had the right to keep certain details of their child's birth private. Many felt that the public was not entitled to see medical records or official documentation just because Lilibet was born into the royal lineage. They argued that the couple had been forced to step back from royal duties due to media harassment, and therefore, they owed no one an explanation regarding their private family matters. On the other side of the debate were skeptics who believed that the inconsistencies in the birth announcement and documentation were too significant to ignore. These individuals did not necessarily claim that Meghan and Harry had fabricated the birth of their daughter, but they questioned why there was so little transparency surrounding the event. The biggest question raised by this group was, if everything was legitimate, why not simply provide proof and end the speculation? They pointed out that most of the controversy could have been avoided with a straightforward confirmation from the hospital or a public statement from a medical professional who had been present at the birth. Many of these critics had previously supported Meghan and Harry's claims of mistreatment by the royal family, but the birth controversy left them feeling uneasy. Some wondered if this situation indicated a pattern of selective truth-telling, where Meghan and Harry only chose to share information when it suited their narrative. This skepticism extended beyond royal watchers and reached mainstream audiences. Polls conducted by news outlets showed that public trust in Meghan and Harry had taken a noticeable hit in the months following Lilibet's birth. Even those who had been neutral on the couple before began to express doubts about their credibility. The controversy took on a life of its own on platforms like Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok. While traditional news outlets covered the story with a mix of curiosity and caution, social media discussions were far more intense and unfiltered. On Twitter, heated debates played out daily, with users analyzing every detail of Meghan's pregnancy photos, the birth certificate, and past statements made by the Sussexes. Threads dissecting the timeline of events went viral, with thousands of retweets and comments. YouTube became a major battleground for independent commentators, with content creators producing deep-dive videos analyzing every piece of available evidence. Some YouTubers took a more investigative approach, pulling together public records and past media coverage, while others leaned into more speculative and sensationalist narratives. Reddit, known for its investigative online communities, saw entire threads dedicated to crowdsourced research. Users compared birth certificate formats, discussed California birth registration laws, and even attempted to contact Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital for verification. These efforts, while largely amateur, contributed to the growing body of information being analyzed and debated online. TikTok also played a significant role in spreading theories, with short videos summarizing key points of the controversy reaching millions of views. The format of the platform allowed for quick and digestible breakdowns of the situation, making it easier for casual observers to engage with the topic. The sheer volume of online discussion meant that even those who were not particularly interested in the royal family found themselves drawn into the debate. Whether people believed in the theories or not, the fact that so many questions remained unanswered made it a compelling mystery. One of the biggest consequences of the controversy was the impact it had on Meghan and Harry's reputation. Prior to Lilibet's birth, they had positioned themselves as advocates for honesty, transparency, and exposing misinformation. They had criticized the British media for spreading falsehoods and had called for greater accountability from institutions they felt were misleading the public. However, the birth controversy placed them in an awkward position. By refusing to address the inconsistencies, they found themselves being accused of the very behavior they had criticized in others. If transparency and truth were important values for them, why were they avoiding the topic? In the months following the controversy, Meghan and Harry's popularity declined, particularly in the UK. Polls showed a growing sense of distrust toward the couple, even among those who had previously been sympathetic to their struggles. While they retained strong support in certain American media circles, their credibility took a noticeable hit in the broader public sphere. Raising her children, and even shared anecdotes about Lilibet. However, she did not mention anything about the birth controversy. For many, this felt like a missed opportunity. If there was nothing to hide, why not take a moment to clear up the rumors? Meghan had no issue speaking about other aspects of motherhood, so her decision to ignore the controversy entirely only made it seem like she was deliberately avoiding the topic. While Meghan and Harry were expected to respond to the controversy, there was also curiosity about how the British royal family would handle the situation. Would Buckingham Palace issue a statement reaffirming the birth details? Would any senior royals publicly acknowledge the concerns? The answer was a resounding silence. The royal family did not release any statement addressing the controversy surrounding Lilibet's birth. In fact, aside from a brief congratulatory message when the birth was first announced, Buckingham Palace remained completely detached from the discussion. This approach was not entirely surprising. The royal family has a long-standing policy of not engaging with speculative media reports, especially those that do not directly affect their official duties. However, some royal commentators noted that the silence was unusual given the importance of lineage and birth records within the monarchy. If the royal family had been aware of any discrepancies in Lilibet's birth details, it was possible that they chose to distance themselves from the situation to avoid further controversy. Alternatively, their silence could have been a strategic decision, allowing Meghan and Harry to handle the matter on their own. One possible reason for Meghan and Harry's lack of response was the potential legal implications of addressing the controversy. If any part of Lilibet's birth certificate had been altered or misrepresented, admitting to an inconsistency could open the door to legal scrutiny. Even if the changes were minor, admitting to inaccuracies on an official document could have serious consequences. From a public relations standpoint, addressing the controversy head-on also carried risks. If they denied the allegations outright but new evidence emerged contradicting their claims, it could cause irreparable damage to their credibility. On the other hand, if they admitted to discrepancies but tried to downplay their significance, it could lead to even more questions about what else they may have misrepresented. By choosing not to respond, they avoided the immediate fallout of having to explain inconsistencies. However, this approach also allowed the controversy to grow unchecked, creating a situation where speculation continued to dominate the narrative. The lack of a clear response from Meghan and Harry had a noticeable impact on how they were perceived by the public. While their most loyal supporters continued to defend them, others began to view their silence as suspicious. Social media was filled with debates over whether their refusal to address the issue indicated guilt or was simply a strategic decision to avoid engaging with negativity. Polls conducted by various media outlets showed a decline in public trust toward Meghan and Harry, particularly among those who had previously been neutral on their ongoing feud with the royal family. For those who had followed their story closely, the situation was frustrating. Meghan and Harry had built their brand on exposing supposed falsehoods within the royal establishment, calling out tabloid misinformation, and demanding accountability. Yet, when faced with questions about something as fundamental as the birth of their child, they refused to provide answers. The unresolved questions surrounding Lilibet's birth may not have immediate consequences for Meghan and Harry, but they could have long-term implications. If new evidence surfaces contradicting their official statements, it could permanently damage their credibility. Additionally, as Lilibet grows older, questions about her birth may resurface in unexpected ways. Future biographers, historians, and even investigative journalists may continue to examine the inconsistencies, ensuring that the controversy does not simply fade away. For now, Meghan and Harry seem content to ignore the speculation, hoping that the media cycle will eventually move on. But as long as unanswered questions remain, the mystery surrounding Lilibet's birth will continue to cast a shadow over their public image. From the moment speculation began surrounding the birth of Lilibet Diana, the public reaction was swift, intense, and deeply divided. The controversy over inconsistencies in the birth announcement, the delayed release of the birth certificate, and the unusual secrecy surrounding the event quickly became a major talking point across social media platforms, news forums, and online discussions. For many, the debate was not just about whether Meghan and Harry had been truthful about the birth of their daughter. It was about credibility, trust, and the broader implications of their actions. Given their history of speaking out against misinformation, why were they not addressing the growing speculation head-on? The controversy also had potential long-term implications for their brand. Meghan and Harry had built a media presence around their personal narrative, sharing intimate details about their lives in interviews, documentaries, and even Harry's memoir Spare. But if people began to question the authenticity of their statements, it could impact the success of their future projects. Where does the debate go from here? As time passed, the intensity of the public debate gradually faded, but it never truly disappeared. The birth controversy became another chapter in the ongoing saga of Meghan and Harry, lingering as an unresolved issue that would occasionally resurface whenever their names made headlines again. For their supporters, the controversy was nothing more than a fabricated scandal fueled by a biased media. For their critics, it remained a glaring example of inconsistency in the Sussexes' public narrative. And for those in the middle, it was an unanswered mystery, one that could have been easily resolved with a little more transparency. Ultimately, whether the full truth ever comes to light will depend on Meghan and Harry themselves. They have the power to put an end to the speculation at any time, but whether they choose to do so remains to be seen. Until then, the debate will continue to exist in the background, a lingering question mark in the ever-complicated story of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Throughout the growing controversy surrounding the birth of Lilibet Diana, Buckingham Palace remained largely silent. Unlike previous royal births, which were accompanied by formal announcements and public acknowledgements from the royal family, the birth of Meghan and Harry's daughter was met with a notably different response. For many, this silence was telling. The royal family has long adhered to a strict policy of not engaging in speculative media stories, often summed up by the motto, "Never complain, never explain." However, given the serious questions being raised about the birth records, the lack of a response from Buckingham Palace only deepened the mystery. On June 6, 2021, when Meghan and Harry officially announced the birth of their daughter, the royal family released a brief congratulatory message through their social media channels and official website. The statement read, "Congratulations to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex on the birth of Lilibet Diana, the Queen, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are delighted with the news." This was standard protocol. Similar congratulatory messages had been issued for other royal births, including the arrivals of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. However, unlike those previous instances, there was no public statement directly from Queen Elizabeth II or any other senior royal. This raised eyebrows among royal watchers. Traditionally, when a new member of the royal family is born, the Queen issues a more formal statement, sometimes accompanied by an official photograph or a personal remark from the monarch. In this case, the lack of such a statement was viewed as unusually distant. Moreover, there was no official announcement displayed outside Buckingham Palace, a long-standing tradition where the details of a royal birth are printed on an ornate easel for the public to see. The absence of this public acknowledgement, particularly given Lilibet's connection to the royal family, was seen as a further indication that something was different about this birth. Reports later surfaced claiming that Queen Elizabeth II was informed about Lilibet's birth before the public announcement was made. According to sources close to the palace, she was notified by Prince Harry via a private call. However, no official confirmation of this conversation was ever given. Additionally, the Sussexes claimed that they had sought the Queen's permission to use the name Lilibet for their daughter, a nickname that had been personally used by the late Prince Philip and other close family members for Her Majesty. Buckingham Palace never confirmed or denied whether such permission had been granted. In a rare moment of deviation from their usual silence, a palace source reportedly told BBC journalist Johnny Diamond that the Queen was not consulted about the name prior to the announcement. This led to a brief public dispute, with Harry and Meghan's team insisting that they had received approval. The fact that the palace allowed this contradiction to stand without an official correction suggested a subtle but clear indication that relations between the Sussexes and the royal family were still strained. Both Prince Charles and Prince William, who would have traditionally been among the first to publicly acknowledge the birth of a new royal family member, also remained relatively quiet. Prince Charles, during a public engagement a few days after Lilibet's birth, was asked about his new granddaughter. His response was diplomatic, but distant. "The development of family is always wonderful, and I wish them all the happiness in the world." There was no elaboration, no personal touch, and no publicized effort to visit the newborn. This stood in contrast to previous royal births, where family members made public comments expressing their joy and excitement. Prince William and Kate Middleton also maintained a similar approach. While their official Twitter account shared a message congratulating Meghan and Harry, there was no follow-up comment from them in interviews or public appearances. This was particularly noteworthy because when Archie was born, both William and Kate had spoken to the press about how happy they were for the couple. This lack of enthusiasm or visible warmth added to the speculation that Buckingham Palace was deliberately distancing itself from the birth controversy. One of the most pressing questions surrounding Buckingham Palace's stance on the issue was whether they had any involvement in verifying the accuracy of Lilibet's birth records. In past royal births, Buckingham Palace was directly involved in ensuring that the official birth announcement aligned with protocol. Medical professionals who attended the birth of royal babies traditionally signed official documents verifying the details. In the case of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, the records were publicly accessible and included signatures from attending physicians, ensuring transparency. With Lilibet, however, Buckingham Palace had no involvement in the registration or verification of the birth details, given that the Sussexes were now living in the United States. This meant that any discrepancies in Lilibet's birth certificate, place of birth, or announcement timeline were entirely in Meghan and Harry's control. The absence of Buckingham Palace's oversight on this matter meant that they were unlikely to intervene or issue a statement either confirming or disputing the birth details. Instead, their approach appeared to be one of strategic avoidance. By saying nothing, they ensured that any controversy remained solely in the hands of Meghan and Harry. There were several possible reasons why Buckingham Palace chose not to engage with the birth controversy. 1. Avoiding further conflict. The relationship between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family was already tense following the Oprah Winfrey interview, in which Meghan and Harry made serious allegations about their treatment within the monarchy. Engaging in the birth controversy could have led to further public disputes and unwanted media attention. 2. Maintaining the royal image. The royal family has always operated under a strict policy of maintaining dignity and avoiding unnecessary drama. By refusing to acknowledge the speculation, they avoided getting dragged into a media storm that could have reflected poorly on the institution. 3. Letting the media do the work, instead of directly addressing the controversy. Buckingham Palace may have relied on the media to ask the difficult questions. By remaining silent, they allowed journalists and independent investigators to continue digging, rather than giving a direct statement that could be scrutinized or challenged. 4. Legal considerations. If Buckingham Palace had publicly supported or denied the birth details and later evidence emerged proving discrepancies, it could have put the institution in a legally compromising position. Avoiding the issue altogether prevented them from making any statements that could later be proven false. Did the palace know more than they were letting on? One of the most intriguing aspects of Buckingham Palace's silence is the possibility that they were aware of inconsistencies in the birth records, but chose not to intervene. Given the historical importance of royal bloodlines, the palace has a vested interest in ensuring that the records of royal births are accurate and legitimate. If they had detected any irregularities but decided not to challenge them publicly, it could mean that they prioritized avoiding scandal over exposing potential discrepancies. Additionally, it is possible that they had behind-the-scenes discussions with Meghan and Harry regarding the birth, but ultimately decided that addressing it publicly was not in their best interest. If there were concerns about the legitimacy of certain details, these matters may have been handled privately rather than through an official statement. By remaining silent, Buckingham Palace effectively left the Sussexes to deal with the controversy on their own. While this may have been a calculated decision, it also meant that public suspicions surrounding Lilibet's birth continued to grow. As years pass, historians and royal experts may continue to analyze this event, and if further evidence of inconsistencies emerges, it could lead to renewed scrutiny. Buckingham Palace's refusal to engage could either be seen as a wise move to avoid unnecessary drama, or a missed opportunity to clarify the record before it spiraled into a full-fledged conspiracy. Regardless, their silence ensured one thing. The mystery surrounding Lilibet's birth remains one of the most unusual and talked about events in modern royal history. Legal implications. Can the Sussexes be investigated? As speculation around the birth of Lilibet Diana continued to mount, discussions shifted from public curiosity to potential legal implications. If any part of the birth records had been falsified or misrepresented, could Meghan Markle and Prince Harry face legal consequences? Would authorities in the United States or the United Kingdom have any jurisdiction over the matter? And if so, what could the penalties be? While the idea of legal action may seem extreme, official documents, including birth certificates, are subject to strict regulations, and any inconsistencies in them could have serious repercussions. The case of Lilibet's birth raises several legal questions, particularly concerning the accuracy of public records, international jurisdiction, and potential consequences if any deception were involved. Could Lilibet's birth certificate be investigated? In California, where Lilibet was reportedly born, birth certificates are legally binding documents that must be filed with the state within 10 days of a child's birth. These documents serve as the official record of a person's birth and are required for a variety of legal purposes, including passport applications, social security registration, and proving citizenship. If any part of the information on a birth certificate is found to be deliberately false, it could be considered a violation of California law. The California Health and Safety Code, Section 103400, states that the willful falsification of a birth record is illegal and can carry legal penalties, including fines and potential criminal charges. However, proving intentional falsification is challenging. Minor errors or formatting inconsistencies, such as differences in name presentation, are typically not grounds for legal action unless it can be demonstrated that they were deliberate attempts to deceive. If investigators were to look into Lilibet's birth certificate, they would need to determine whether any discrepancies were due to clerical errors or intentional misrepresentation. Process. While birth certificates in California are public records to some extent, certain details are protected under privacy laws. For authorities to investigate, there would need to be a legal complaint filed, or an entity with jurisdiction, such as the California Department of Public Health, CDPH, would have to initiate a review. What about immigration and citizenship laws? Another key legal aspect of this controversy is the question of citizenship and legal documentation. Since Lilibet Diana is the child of a British father and an American mother, she is entitled to dual citizenship, but the process of registering her British citizenship requires adherence to specific laws. Under UK law, British citizenship is automatically granted to children born to a British citizen, even if they are born outside of the United Kingdom. However, to formalize this status, the birth must be properly registered with the UK Home Office. If any inconsistencies were found in the documents submitted to the UK authorities, it could pose legal issues for Lilibet's citizenship application. The British Nationality Act of 1981 outlines the requirements for transmitting citizenship, and any discrepancies in birth records could, in theory, lead to delays or complications in the process. Additionally, because Lilibet was born in the United States, she is automatically a U.S. citizen by birth. However, for her to obtain a U.S. passport, her birth certificate must be presented as official proof of her birth details. If there were any legal concerns about the authenticity of her birth certificate, it could impact the issuance of travel documents. While these concerns remain hypothetical, they highlight how birth documentation plays a crucial role in international legal matters. Any discrepancies in official records could create legal obstacles down the line, particularly if Lilibet were ever to travel or reside in the UK under her British citizenship. Could the U.S. government investigate? If allegations of birth record falsification gain traction, U.S. authorities would have the jurisdiction to investigate, particularly if a formal complaint were filed. Agencies such as the California Attorney General's Office or the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, could theoretically look into the matter if there were evidence suggesting fraud in official documentation. However, such an investigation would require substantial evidence beyond public speculation. For authorities to take action, there would need to be a formal complaint filed by an entity with standing, such as a government office or legal organization, evidence of deliberate falsification, rather than minor discrepancies or clerical errors, a clear violation of law that falls within state or federal jurisdiction. Without these elements, an investigation is unlikely to take place. Additionally, given Meghan and Harry's high-profile status, any investigation into their child's birth records would be politically sensitive. It is unlikely that U.S. authorities would pursue legal action unless there was clear, indisputable proof of wrongdoing. Could the UK government get involved? Since Lilibet Diana is a British citizen by birthright, there have been questions about whether the UK government has any role in investigating her birth records. The UK government does not typically intervene in matters of birth registration for citizens born abroad, unless there is a direct issue related to nationality or passport fraud. The UK Home Office oversees the process of registering foreign-born British citizens, but they do not conduct independent investigations into birth records unless discrepancies are flagged during the application process. If, for example, there were inconsistencies in the documents submitted for Lilibet's UK citizenship registration, the Home Office could request additional verification. However, unless there was significant legal evidence of falsification, it is unlikely that UK authorities would formally investigate the matter. Could Meghan and Harry face legal consequences? Even if an investigation into Lilibet's birth records were launched, the likelihood of Meghan or Harry facing direct legal consequences is low. If discrepancies were found in the birth certificate, they would most likely be attributed to clerical errors rather than deliberate fraud. In such cases, the correction of the records would be the primary course of action, rather than legal prosecution. If an investigation revealed deliberate falsification, the most likely legal consequence would be financial penalties rather than criminal charges. Birth certificate fraud is typically treated as a civil violation rather than a criminal offense unless it is part of a larger scheme involving identity fraud. However, if Meghan and Harry were found to have knowingly falsified documents for purposes such as citizenship fraud or tax evasion, then legal action could become more serious. In extreme cases, falsifying official records can result in charges of perjury, fraud, or obstruction of justice, though there is currently no evidence to suggest that such a scenario applies in this case. What happens next? At present, there is no active legal investigation into the birth records of Lilibet Diana. While the controversy has sparked widespread discussion, no government agency has signaled an intent to pursue legal action. For any legal inquiry to proceed, one of the following would need to happen. A formal complaint would need to be filed with relevant authorities. Evidence of falsification would need to be presented beyond public speculation. A jurisdictional body, such as the California Department of Public Health or UK Home Office, would need to flag inconsistencies in official records. Without these factors, the controversy is likely to remain a matter of public debate rather than a legal case. While the legal implications of Lilibet Diana's birth records are an interesting aspect of the controversy, the likelihood of actual legal action against Meghan and Harry remains minimal. The complexity of international law, privacy protections, and the high threshold for proving document falsification make it unlikely that this issue will result in any legal consequences. However, the broader issue of credibility remains. If future documents or legal filings reveal inconsistencies, it could have long-term implications for Meghan and Harry's public trust. While they may not face criminal charges, lingering doubts about their transparency could impact their reputation and standing on the global stage. For now, the question of whether the Sussex